Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, to the sound of metal scraping against concrete. You step outside, half asleep, only to find your driveway empty, your most prized possession gone. That cold sinking feeling hits your chest like ice. That's exactly what James Smith felt the night his rare 1969 Ducati Scrambler, worth more than $500,000, disappeared into the dark. At first, he thought it had been stolen, but the truth was worse. His bike hadn't been taken by thieves, it had been towed, not by police, not by the city, but by a power-hungry HOA president, who believed she could treat a man's property like trash. What she didn't know was that James Smith wasn't an ordinary homeowner. Her arrogant move had just started a fight she'd never be ready for. Grimes was a quiet man who loved peace and privacy. He wasn't the type to hang out at neighborhood barbecues or gossip over garden fences. He paid his HOA fees, followed every rule, and asked for only one thing: to be left alone. That peace ended the morning he opened his mailbox. Inside was a letter printed on thick fancy paper, the kind that smelled like arrogance. The letter read, "Mr. Smith, it has come to the board's attention that your motorcycle, currently visible in your driveway, does not meet our community's aesthetic standards. Please remove it from public view within 72 hours, to avoid further action." James read it once, then again. By the third time his disbelief turned into quiet anger. They had called his Ducati unsightly. Unsightly. The bike wasn't just any motorcycle, it was a work of art, polished chrome, shining golden tank, every inch crafted to perfection. And yet, these self-important neighbors had labeled it an eyesore. At first, James laughed. He figured it had to be a mistake, maybe some overzealous HOA volunteer with too much free time and not enough sense. But the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. This was intentional. This wasn't about community standards, it was about control. And James Smith, a man who'd worked hard for everything he owned, wasn't about to bow down to anyone pretending to have authority over him. At the next HOA meeting, James walked in with one goal: to make it clear that he wouldn't be bullied. The board sat around a cheap folding table, 6 middle-aged faces full of self-importance. At the center sat Susan Whitmore, the HOA president, perfect hair, pearls, pastel sweater, the kind of woman who believed running an HOA made her royalty. She didn't even look up when James entered, and that told him everything. He walked straight to the front, the letter folded in his hand. "Let's talk about this," he said firmly. Susan raised her eyes slowly, with that fake smile people wear when they think they're in charge. "Mr. Smith, we're in the middle of—" James dropped the letter on the table. "My Ducati," he interrupted. "What's this nonsense about removing it from my driveway?" Her lips curved into a thin smile. "This is a violation of community standards. We have to maintain a certain image here, an image that doesn't include motorcycles, right?" James shot back, his eyes steady. Susan's smile wavered but didn't fade. "We're protecting property values, Mr. Smith. Our neighborhood has a reputation to uphold." James nearly laughed. He had sat in corporate boardrooms negotiating multi-million-dollar deals. He knew manipulation when he heard it. This wasn't about property values, it was about ego. Susan wanted control, and she'd picked the wrong man to push. He could have just rolled his Ducati into the garage and avoided the fight. But James wasn't built that way. He'd faced too much in life to let someone like Susan dictate what he could or couldn't do on his own property. He leaned forward slightly, looked her dead in the eye, and said one word: "No." The air in the room changed. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Susan's face twitched, a small crack in her perfect smile. "You refuse to comply?" she asked, her tone tightening. "That's exactly what I'm saying," James replied. "Then further action will be taken," she warned. James nodded slowly. "Try it." The room fell silent, because deep down, everyone there could feel it. This wasn't going to end quietly. That night, James sat in bed staring at the ceiling, a restless tension in his chest. He didn't trust people like Susan, the ones who smiled while plotting behind the scenes. And sure enough, his instincts were right. In the middle of the night, a strange sound woke him, a heavy metallic clank, like chains dragging across pavement. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then his gut twisted. Something was wrong. He rushed to the window. His driveway was empty. The Ducati was gone. For a few long seconds, James Smith stood frozen at the window, unable to breathe. His driveway looked wrong. Too empty. Too quiet. His heart thudded in his chest as reality sank in. His Ducati Scrambler was gone. He rushed outside, barefoot, the cool pavement stinging his feet. The neighborhood was silent, except for the hum of streetlights and the chirp of crickets. No broken glass. No tire marks. No alarm had gone off. But the bike was gone without a trace. James knew exactly what that meant. It hadn't been stolen by criminals. It had been taken by someone with authority. Someone who thought they could get away with it. There was only one name in his mind. The HOA. Susan Whitmore's smug face flashed in his head. The fake smile. The calm tone. The way she said further action will be taken. Well, she had just taken it. James ran back inside and grabbed his truck keys.
He needed proof before confronting her. He dialed the local impound lot, hoping he was wrong. After a few rings, a sleepy voice answered. "Yeah, impound services. My motorcycle," James said sharply. "A 1969 Ducati Scrambler with a gold tank. Was it brought in tonight?" There was silence, then the sound of computer keys clicking. The man yawned. "Yeah, that one came in a few hours ago." James froze. "A few hours ago? Is it in one piece?" Another pause. Then the man hesitated. Depends what you mean by one piece." James didn't wait for more. 15 minutes later, his truck screeched to a stop outside the impound yard. Gravel sprayed under the tires as he jumped out and ran toward the chain-link fence. And there it was, or what was left of it. His golden Ducati lay on its side, crushed and twisted like scrap metal. The once shining tank was dented inward, the chrome scratched and bent, the handlebars snapped. The front wheel turned at an impossible angle. The sight hit James like a punch to the gut. That bike had been more than a machine. It was a part of his life. Years of collecting, polishing, restoring, gone in one careless, arrogant act. A short man in a reflective vest walked up, rubbing his eyes. "Yeah," he muttered, "that's how it came in. You let them tow it like this?" James demanded, his voice low but deadly calm. The man shrugged. "Wasn't my call. HOA called it in, said it was abandoned property. We just picked it up." Abandoned. The word stung like an insult. His bike had been sitting in his own driveway, shining, protected, loved, and they had called it trash. James took a long, slow breath. His anger didn't explode. It hardened, like ice. He believed in solving things quietly, in walking away from small injustices. But this was no small injustice. This was theft. This was destruction. This was disrespect. He could almost hear Susan's voice in his head. Calm, fake, condescending. "Mr. Smith, you should learn to follow the rules." Oh, he would follow the rules now. His rules. Because Susan had no idea who she was dealing with. James wasn't just a motorcycle lover. He wasn't some retiree tinkering in his garage. He was the CEO of Ducati North America, a man who knew what power really looked like, and how to use it. By the time the sun rose, James had already called his legal team. His voice stayed calm as he explained what had happened, every word precise, controlled, cold. An HOA had ordered the illegal towing and destruction of a historic collector's piece, a one-of-a-kind motorcycle worth over $500,000. By morning, Ducati's legal division was already drafting paperwork. James didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. But Susan Whitmore was about to learn that when you play games with powerful people out of arrogance, the consequences don't come knocking. They kick down the door. At the next HOA meeting, just 2 days later, James walked in as if nothing had happened, his face calm, his steps steady. The rest of the board sat nervously around the table, pretending they didn't know what he knew. Susan sat at the center, still trying to wear her authority like a crown. When she finally looked up, her tone was as fake as ever. "I hope you understand now, Mr. Smith," she said sweetly, "that this community is not a junkyard." She actually called his $500,000 Ducati junk. James smiled, not warmly, coldly. "Oh, I understand perfectly," he said quietly. For the first time, Susan's confident smile slipped. She blinked, unsure of herself for the first time in months. James stood up, nodded politely, and walked out. No shouting, no threats, no drama, because this fight was no longer about words, it was about consequences. That night, he sat in his office under the soft glow of a desk lamp, reading the final draft his lawyers had sent over. The letter was simple, sharp, a $1.2 million lawsuit against the Homeowners Association of Meadow Ridge Estates for theft, property damage, and unlawful seizure. It was written on Ducati's official letterhead, and at the bottom, in bold print, one line stood out. Filed under the authority of James R. Smith, CEO, Ducati North America. James leaned back in his chair, eyes hard, expression calm. Susan had wanted control. Now she was about to lose everything. The lawsuit hit the HOA like a thunderstorm. Within hours, panic spread through the quiet neighborhood. The same people who once nodded proudly beside Susan now avoided her calls. Emails flew back and forth, filled with fear and excuses. Susan Whitmore, once the queen of the cul-de-sac, was suddenly drowning in paperwork, legal letters, and angry board members. At the emergency meeting, she slammed the lawsuit papers on the table. "This is insane," she shouted. Her perfect hair was a mess, her pearls gone, her hands shaking. Across from her sat James Smith, calm as ever, arms folded, a faint smile on his face. "I don't know, Susan," he said softly. "Seems fair to me. You called my Ducati junk. That junk is worth more than your house." Her face turned red. She wanted to fight, but deep down she knew it was over. The HOA's funds couldn't cover the damages, and no one was willing to help her now. In court it was a massacre. Every arrogant email Susan had ever sent, every violation notice she'd signed, every fake justification she'd used, all of it was laid out in front of the judge. When photos of the destroyed Ducati appeared on the screen, the courtroom fell silent. The judge shook his head. "This was deliberate," he said sternly. His ruling was swift and harsh. The HOA was fully responsible, ordered to pay $1.2 million for theft, property damage, and emotional distress. A month later, moving trucks lined the street. Neighbors peeked from windows as workers carried out her furniture, her artwork, her pride. some even opened champagne bottles. For years, Susan had bullied them with HOA rules, and now they watched her fall. At the end of the driveway stood James, quiet, hands in his pockets, watching with calm satisfaction. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to, because now the house she once ruled from. Weeks later, when the doors reopened, the house looked completely different. The pastel walls were gone, replaced by sleek black panels and warm lights. A sign hung above the entrance. Inside, at the center of the living room, stood the restored 1969 Ducati Scrambler, polished to perfection, its gold tank gleaming like sunlight. A plaque beside it read, "Rebuilt from destruction, proof that respect can't be towed." Visitors came from all over to see it, the bike that survived arrogance and came back stronger. James never gloated. He never bragged. He simply said justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly, like an engine at peace.